I froze in the doorway, breath caught in my throat, as Daniel's voice carried from the living room. Don't worry, Melissa. Once she's on the high seas, it'll look like she slipped overboard. My own son, my flesh and blood, was plotting my death, as if it were a business transaction. The walls seemed to close in, but my tears dried before they could fall. If Daniel thought his mother was weak, he was about to learn a lesson he would regret 3 times over. My name is Evelyn Carter, 66 years old, a retired music teacher who has lived quietly in Portland ever since my husband passed a decade ago. For 10 years I had lived alone in my small Portland house, a widow tending her garden and filling silence with the scrape of pruning shears. Richard had been gone a decade now, leaving me with roses, memories, and a loneliness that grew heavier each season. My son Daniel had once been the center of my world, but his calls grew short, his visits rare, until I became another errand he avoided. That's why the sound of his car in my driveway startled me. I wiped dirt from my gloves and stepped onto the porch. Daniel climbed the steps with Melissa on his arm, both smiling too brightly. "Mom," he said, hugging me tighter than he had in years. "We have a surprise." Melissa handed me a golden envelope, her manicured fingers drumming against it. "Open it." Inside lay glossy tickets. 7-day Alaska cruise, first class. My breath caught. It was the trip I'd always postponed for Daniel's tuition, for car repairs, for everything but myself. "Daniel," I whispered. "This must have cost a fortune." He smiled gently. "There's no price on your happiness. You've sacrificed everything for me. Melissa and I wanted to do something special." His words should have soothed me, but something in his eyes unsettled me. They flicked away as he spoke, as if he couldn't bear to look at me. Melissa's grin never reached her eyes. I pressed the tickets to my chest. "It's beautiful. I don't know what to say." "Say you'll go," Melissa chimed. "The ship leaves in 2 days. Everything's arranged." 2 days. So sudden. I nodded, though unease curled at the pit of my stomach. Throughout their visit, Daniel used a softened tone, almost boyish, calling me Mom the way he hadn't in years. Melissa praised my cookies, but slipped hers into her napkin when she thought I wasn't looking. It was a performance, almost convincing. That night, after they left, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the golden envelope. My heart wanted to believe their kindness. My instincts whispered otherwise. The reasons speak, but I folded my doubts away and began to pack. Perhaps I was being paranoid. Perhaps Daniel truly wanted to repay the years I had given him. The evening before the cruise, I realized I'd forgotten my blood pressure pills in the upstairs bathroom. Driving back, streetlights stretched long shadows across the driveway. The house smelled faintly of lavender as I stepped inside. That's when I heard Daniel's voice, low and deliberate. From the living room, I froze, one hand on the doorknob. "Don't worry, Melissa," he said. "Once she's on the high seas, it'll look like she slipped overboard. Insurance plus the house enough to wipe out our debts." The world tilted. My son's voice, the same voice that once begged me for bedtime stories, now planned my death like a business deal. I pressed my back to the wall, fighting the urge to collapse. In that moment, I understood the boy I raised with every ounce of love was gone. In his place stood a man who saw me as nothing but a check to be cashed. And standing there in the darkness of my own home, I whispered to myself, if that is how my son wants it, then so be it. But he will regret this 3 times over. The night I overheard Daniel's voice, the world I thought I knew split in 2. One half still held the son I had raised, the boy who clutched my hand on the first day of kindergarten, the young man who cried at his father's funeral. The other half revealed a stranger cold, calculating, speaking of my death as though it were nothing more than a bill to be paid. I spent the rest of that night sitting in the dark kitchen, my suitcase open on the floor beside me, every familiar sound, the clock ticking on the wall, the wind rattling the window felt sharper, almost mocking. My son wanted me gone. My son wanted me dead. But the longer I sat there, the more a strange calm began to settle over me. Fear had burned itself out, leaving behind something far stronger. I would not run. I would not hide. If Daniel wanted me on that ship, then I would go. But I would not go as a victim. At dawn, I picked up my phone and dialed a number I had kept for years but never thought I would use. Frank Doyle. A deep voice answered after 3 rings. Mr. Doyle, I said, my voice trembling at first. This is Evelyn Carter. We met at my neighbor's barbecue last spring. You gave me your card. I remember. How can I help you? I hesitated. Then let the words fall like stones. My son is planning to kill me. He bought me a ticket for a cruise to Alaska. And I overheard him tell his wife it's a one-way trip. He said it will look like I slipped overboard. There was silence. Long enough for me to hear my own pulse pounding in my ears. Finally, Frank spoke. Mrs. Carter, those are serious accusations. Are you absolutely certain? I am certain, I said firmly. I heard him with my own ears. He mentioned my life insurance. He mentioned the house. It was as if he were reading from a ledger. Frank's voice grew steadier. Colder. All right. Then we treat this as real. Listen carefully. I want you to record every call he makes to you from now on. Save every message. I'll start digging into his finances, debts, loans, anything that could explain motive. When you return, you'll need evidence strong enough to hold up in court. Until then, keep your guard up. Mr. Doyle Frank. He interrupted gently. Call me Frank. And Evelyn, don't underestimate yourself. You've survived things far worse than a greedy son. You're still here. That means you're stronger than he knows. His words steadied me more than I cared to admit. When I hung up, the fear was still there. But now it had a backbone. Now it had purpose. By mid-morning, I was standing at the port with my suitcase, staring at the massive ship named Northern Star. Its white hull gleamed in the pale sunlight, towering over the crowd of passengers streaming up the gangway. Families laughed as they wheeled their luggage. Couples posed for photos. Children darted between the adults, already buzzing with excitement. To them, this was the start of a dream vacation. To me, it was a battlefield. I straightened my shoulders, smoothed the wrinkles in my coat, and forced a smile onto my lips. I would play the role expected of me, a frail, grateful mother taking a gift from her son. My voice would be sweet, my eyes watery with supposed gratitude. No one would suspect the war churning beneath my skin. When the attendant took my passport and ticket, she beamed. First time on a cruise? Ma'am, yes, I replied softly, tilting my head just so, the way older women sometimes do when they want to appear harmless. My son gave me this trip. He said I needed to relax. How thoughtful of him, she said warmly. If only she knew. I walked up the ramp slowly, deliberately, as if every step took effort. Inside, the ship was a marvel of glass and brass, chandeliers glittering over a polished lobby. Passengers bustled around me, their excitement tangible. But I kept my performance steady, small, hesitant smiles, hands gripping the railing as if I feared losing my balance. In truth, my balance had never been stronger. Every corner of this ship, every hallway, every balcony, I would memorize it. If Daniel thought I was weak, I would let him keep thinking it. And when the time came, his own confidence would betray him. That night, as the Northern Star pulled away from the port, I stood at the railing with the cold wind on my face. Lights from the city shrank behind us until they were nothing but faint sparks swallowed by the horizon. I whispered to the dark water below, a promise only I could hear. If my son wants to play this game, he has no idea who taught him patience. The first morning aboard the Northern Star began with sunlight spilling through my cabin window, golden and bright, as if the ocean itself had decided to welcome me. I sat at the small desk, staring at the itinerary folded neatly in my hands, and reminded myself this wasn't a vacation. Every step I took had to be calculated. Every smile, every word, every movement had to be a mask. My son thought I was prey, He had no idea I was already watching for predators. I decided to eat breakfast in the main dining room, where the air smelled of fresh coffee and warm pastries. Passengers crowded the tables. Some dressed in vacation shirts splashed with colors, others in sweaters against the ocean chill. I carried my plate to a quiet corner and told myself to blend in. Keep the act alive. That's when I saw her. She was sitting alone at a table near the window. A woman about my age, with silver hair, pinned neatly at the back of her neck. Her red dress was elegant, but it was her posture that caught my eye straight. Self-assured, with a kind of presence that could silence a noisy room. She read a book while sipping her coffee, the picture of calm independence. Our eyes met by chance. She smiled, not the polite kind strangers exchange on vacation, but something warmer, genuine. I hesitated only a moment before walking over. "Excuse me," I said softly. "Would you mind if I joined you? I never did get used to eating alone." "Please," she answered, her voice smooth with a faint southern lilt. "Company is always welcome." I sat down, grateful for her openness. "I'm Evelyn Carter, from Portland." "Margaret Lane," she said, extending her hand. "Miami. Born and raised. Retired now. Used to run a furniture store with my late husband." We spoke as though we had known each other longer than a few minutes. She told me about the years she had spent building her business, about her 2 daughters who insisted she take this trip, convinced she needed time away from work and responsibility. I listened, nodding, my heart tugged by the familiarity of her story. "It's the same with me," I admitted. "My son gave me this cruise, said I needed a break, time to relax." For a moment, the words tasted bitter in my mouth, but Margaret only smiled. Children, always thinking they know what's best for us. Her laugh was soft, but her eyes were sharp. She studied me with the kind of gaze that could peel back layers. "But you, Evelyn, you don't look like a woman on vacation. You look restless, almost like you're carrying a burden." I froze. Should I tell her? Could I? Every instinct screamed at me to stay silent, to guard my secret. And yet, there was something about Margaret that disarmed me. Maybe it was her candor. Maybe the way she looked at me, as if she already knew I was in trouble. So I gave her a piece of the truth. Not all of it. Not yet. But enough. Let's just say things aren't as perfect as they appear. Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones we can't really trust. Her expression softened. "Oh, I understand that far too well. My first husband nearly bankrupted my family. Betrayal by blood or vows, it cuts deeper than anything else." Her words felt like a bridge. I nodded slowly. "Then you know what it's like to live with eyes wide open. To always be cautious." "I do," she said. Then, lowering her voice, she leaned slightly across the table. "And I know when a woman is in danger." Before I could respond, a chill crept up my spine. It was the sensation of being watched. I turned slightly, scanning the room, and there he was, a man in his 40s, tall, dark-haired, wearing a green jacket too heavy for the dining hall. He wasn't eating, wasn't reading, wasn't even pretending to be occupied. His gaze flickered toward me, then away, then back again, like a shadow that couldn't decide where to settle. I forced myself to keep my composure, to sip my coffee as though nothing were wrong. But my pulse betrayed me. Drumming against the rim of the cup, Margaret followed my glance, then set her book aside. "Do you see him?" she whispered, her lips barely moving. "Yes," I murmured. "I've noticed him before." Her eyes narrowed, her tone turning grave. "Evelyn, that man isn't here for sightseeing. He's here for you." By the time we finished our coffee, Margaret had convinced me of one thing. The first truth I needed was on paper, my ticket. By the 3rd morning aboard the Northern Star, I had learned to move like an actress, smiling at strangers, laughing at small talk while every sense strained beneath the mask. A glance held too long. A pause stretched an instant too far. Each detail mattered. Margaret and I agreed the first place to look for proof was my travel documents. Daniel had promised everything was arranged. But I already knew the answer. The passenger services office gleamed with brass trim. I approached a young woman named Patricia. "Could you please check my reservation?" I asked sweetly. "Evelyn Carter. Cabin 823. She typed briskly, then frowned. "You're booked on the 7-day Alaska cruise, Mrs. Carter. But there's no return flight attached." My stomach clenched. No return flight, correct. Normally, packages include round-trip airfare. Yours is one way. That's unusual. Could I purchase a return ticket now? Of course. She searched the screen. Portland. The day the cruise ends. 3 in the afternoon. $750. I'll take it. When the receipt printed, Margaret slipped it into her purse without a word. Her eyes told me what I already knew: Daniel had never intended for me to come home. Back in my cabin, I stared at the fresh ticket. It felt less like paper than armor. The phone rang. Daniel's name glowed on the screen. "Hello, son," I said lightly. "Mom, how's the cruise?" His voice was warm. Too warm. It's beautiful. Though the office said I didn't have a return flight. Isn't that strange? A pause. I'm sure it's just a mix-up. Melissa and I will handle it. Well, I bought my own ticket. The silence on the line cut deep. Then, he forced a laugh. "Mom, you didn't have to. We had it arranged. You should have trusted us. I just worry," I said softly. "You understand." "Of course. Enjoy yourself. Mom, that's what matters." His words sounded polished, but I felt the edges beneath. Moments later, Melissa called. "Evelyn, how's the cruise?" Her tone was bright, brittle, lovely, though I had to buy my own return ticket. Apparently none was booked. A sharp inhale. "You already bought one?" "Yes. Didn't want to be stranded." Her laugh rang hollow. "Well, that was smart. No need to worry. We'll see you when you get back." She hung up too quickly. My suspicions hardened into certainty. This wasn't oversight, it was intent. That evening, Margaret suggested we blend into the casino crowd. Neon lights flashed. Slot machines chimed. Liquor thickened the air. I played the role of a tipsy widow while Margaret kept watch. That's when I saw him, the man in the green jacket. He slid into the seat beside me. His smile practiced. "Good evening, ma'am." "First time on a cruise?" "Yes," I said with a nervous laugh. "My son sought me. Said I needed to relax." "How thoughtful," he said. Eyes sharp. "You must have a nice cabin." "It's cozy," I replied vaguely. He leaned closer, breath heavy with whiskey. "Which one?" I forced a careless smile. 823. Balcony and all. Though I'm too clumsy to lean over the rails, afraid I'll fall right in. His grin hardened at the edges. "You're right to be cautious. Decks get slippery at night, especially when the mist rolls in." A chill slid down my spine. I excused myself, heart pounding. Later, in the ship's quiet library, Margaret returned, pale. I followed him, she whispered. He went straight to the phone booths. "Evelyn." She gripped my arm. "I heard him," he said. "Yes. Cabin 823 with balcony. She's afraid of railings." Perfect. The ship swayed beneath me, the weight of her words pressing like an anchor. My cabin wasn't just a room. It was the stage where my own son planned my final act. And now, I knew he had an accomplice waiting to deliver it. We went straight to the bridge. Captain Harris listened without blinking and told us to dress for the gala. The night of the captain's gala arrived, draped in glitter and charm. Chandeliers spilled light onto marble floors. Musicians filled the air with soft jazz, and waiters floated past with trays of champagne. To the passengers, it was celebration. To me, it was war disguised in silk. I stood in Margaret's cabin before the mirror, smoothing the folds of my emerald green dress. Richard once said, "It made my eyes glow." Tonight, it was just a costume. My hand held steady as I applied lipstick, though my heart thudded hard enough to shake me. "You look stunning." Margaret murmured, fastening a gold bracelet at my wrist. And more importantly, you look like you don't have a care in the world. That's exactly what he needs to see. I nodded. If Daniel's man is watching, he'll see what he expects. A grateful widow, flattered by her son's gift, enjoying one last dance. She squeezed my arm. But Captain Harris knows the truth. And so do we. Earlier that day, we had shown the captain everything. The recordings, the receipts, Margaret's description of the man in the green jacket. His face had darkened like a storm. Mrs. Carter, you're under my protection now. Tonight, we set the trap. And so the stage was set. The gala glittered like a dream painted over dread. Margaret and I mingled, sipped champagne, even danced beneath the chandeliers. My laughter rang out when prompted, but my eyes swept the room for shadows. Across the hall, I saw him. He had traded his green jacket for a crisp white shirt and black coat, but his stare was sharp as a knife. He was waiting. At 11:30, I whispered, "It's time." I slipped from the hall, moving as though fatigue had caught up with me. Anyone watching would think I was retiring for the night. My heels clicked softly against the polished deck as I entered the elevator for the 8th floor, my supposed destination, but instead of stepping into the corridor, I turned into the stairwell, one level above, where 2 security men in plain clothes waited. Margaret joined me moments later, breath steady, eyes sharp. Together, we peered through the narrow glass panel overlooking the hall that led to my cabin. At midnight, the predator appeared. He moved like a shadow, gloves already pulled tight. From his pocket, he pulled rope and tools. And within seconds, the lock on my door gave way. He slipped inside. My pulse thundered. Every instinct screamed for me to run. But I stayed still, fists clenched at my sides. 3 long minutes later, he stepped onto my balcony. From our vantage point, we watched him tug at the railing, test the rope, measure the distance with cold precision. He was rehearsing my accident, shaping the fall that would never come. That was when the captain gave the signal. Security swept in from both ends of the hall. Hands up. One barked. The man froze, then lunged toward the balcony. But an officer tackled him against the railing. He fought like a trapped animal, cursing, thrashing. But within moments, his wrists were cuffed. His pockets yielded lockpicks, gloves, and his phone. The captain scrolled through messages under the harsh lights. He turned the screen toward me. "Daniel, wait till after the gala. Make it look like she fell. No struggle. Daniel, check the balcony. Make sure it's clean." My knees nearly buckled. Margaret caught my hand. Her grip, the only thing keeping me upright. The captain's voice was low and steady. "Mrs. Carter, this is the proof." The intruder spat curses as they dragged him down the corridor, his voice fading with every step. Silence returned, broken only by the hum of the ship. I pressed a hand to the wall, forcing air into my lungs. My son had not just imagined my death, he had paid to orchestrate it. I leaned closer to the glowing screen. The words seared into me like fire, and I whispered, so low only Margaret could hear Daniel. "You just signed your own sentence." Harris sealed the phone in an evidence bag and told me to sleep. At first light, we'd open everything. The morning after the gala, I felt older than my 66 years. Sleep never came. Each time I shut my eyes, I saw him standing on my balcony with rope in his hand, rehearsing my death. And behind him, always, the shadow of my son. Captain Harris summoned me to his office after breakfast. Margaret walked with me, her presence a quiet anchor. The captain's office smelled faintly of polish and salt air, maps of the Alaskan coast lining the walls. But my eyes went straight to the thick folder on his desk. "Mrs. Carter," he said gravely, "we've compiled everything, piece by piece." He laid it out, the security report from last night's arrest, photographs of the rope and gloves, a transcript of Daniel's messages, the instruction to wait until after the gala and ensure there was no struggle, cold ink over colder intent. Then the captain pushed a small device toward me. "Recordings of your calls. Daniel, dodging your questions. Melissa's hesitation. It's all here. Before I could respond, the secure line on his desk rang. He gestured for me to answer. Mrs. Carter. It's Frank Doyle. Relief washed through me at the detective's voice. Frank, please tell me you've found something. I've found everything, he said. Your son owes $200,000 in gambling debts, illegal poker games, online casinos, the kind of debt that ends with broken kneecaps. Melissa isn't any better. She's buried under more than $60,000 in credit card bills, vacations, jewelry, living far beyond their means. They were drowning. Evelyn. And they decided you were the lifeboat. My throat tightened. So that's why. That's why they wanted me gone. There's more. Frank continued. Daniel forged your signature on loan documents. He used your house as collateral for multiple loans. If you had died at sea, the property would have passed to him free and clear. He wasn't just desperate, he was calculating. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Richard's house, the place we built together, gambled away like poker chips. Thank you, Frank, I whispered. You've given me the truth I needed. When the call ended, I stared at the folder. The photos. The device heavy with recordings. The proof was undeniable. Slowly, deliberately. I reached for my own phone. I need to hear his voice. I told Margaret. One last time. Daniel answered on the second ring. Cheerful. Rehearsed. Mom, how are you? How's the cruise? Stop. I cut in. My voice steady and cold. I know everything. A pause. Everything. What do you mean? I know about the one-way ticket. The man you sent. The debts. The forged loans. All of it. He tried to laugh, but it cracked. Mom, you must be mistaken. Someone's filling your head with lies. No, I said sharply. The lies were yours. A son protects his mother. You're no son. You're a coward. Silence stretched across the line. Then, a falter, Mom. Please. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, I snapped. You chose money over blood, betrayal over family, and now you'll pay for it. His breath rasped faintly. Anger and panic tangled together. Goodbye, Daniel, I said, and before he could respond, I hung up. The phone slipped from my hand. Tears came. Hot and relentless. But they weren't only grief. They were release chains, snapping after years of sacrifice. Margaret pulled me into her arms. For the first time, I cried not as a victim, but as a woman free of illusions. We would dock soon. Frank would meet me on the pier. And the law would do the rest. When the Northern Star docked in Seattle, I stepped off not as a tourist but as a woman carrying proof of her own son's betrayal. The salty wind stung my face. But Frank Doyle's steady hand anchored me. The district attorney is ready, he said. Daniel and Melissa won't get far. By nightfall in Portland, the warrants were signed. Police stormed their home to find suitcases packed and passports ready. They had planned to flee to Mexico, but instead, they were led away in handcuffs. Months later, the trial began. I sat in the courtroom, hands clasped, watching the boy I once cradled try to shrink behind a dark suit. Melissa sat beside him, pale and brittle. Prosecutors laid everything bare: the debts, the forged documents, the recordings, the messages telling his accomplice to make my death look like an accident. Captain Harris testified. Then witnesses from the ship. Finally, they called me. I told the jury about the golden envelope, the overheard phone call, the night a man rehearsed my accident on a balcony, meant to be my grave. My voice trembled only once. When I returned to my seat, Daniel glared, but beneath it I saw fear. After 4 hours, the jury returned. Guilty, attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud. Daniel was sentenced to 18 years. Melissa received 8. When the gavel struck, I didn't feel triumph. I felt grief and justice entwined. My son was gone, not to the sea, but to a cell where he would have years to count the cost of his betrayal. Life after the trial was mine to rebuild. I sold the house that had been forged into loan documents, the place I could no longer walk without hearing Daniel's voice plotting. With the money, I bought a small apartment by the river. Its balcony overlooked water I chose for myself, not one chosen for my death. I taught piano to children, their clumsy notes filling the rooms with joy. Twice a week, I volunteered at a women's center, telling my story so others could see that survival was possible. When Margaret visited, we raised glasses of red wine by the riverside. "We're not just survivors," she said. "We're proof that underestimating women our age is the greatest mistake anyone can make." Daniel thought I'd vanish into the ocean. Instead, his name sank into court records while I learned to live again. I still can't believe I lived through such a storm. From the moment I overheard my own son plotting my death, to the long nights on that ship where every shadow felt like a threat. It often seemed impossible to keep going. Yet here I am, standing on the other side, not just alive, but stronger than I ever imagined. What I learned is simple but powerful. Trust your instincts, even when love tries to silence them. Family can be a source of strength, but when it turns against you, you must find courage in yourself. Survival is not just about holding on, it's about choosing to rebuild, to live again, even when the people you trusted most have betrayed you. Thank you for sharing this journey with me. If my story moved you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your own experiences, moments where you had to stand up for yourself, or times you discovered strength you didn't know you had. Stories like these remind us we're not alone, and together, we can turn pain into resilience.